Good morning. It is 8 a.m. on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. Welcome to the stream. My name is Keith, and I will be hanging out with you today, looking at job trends in tech and checking out the news. How are things going for you? My week's off to a start. I will correctly identify it as that. I didn't feel like I got as much done yesterday, but I got a block of time this morning. I'm going to get some focused work in. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Hey, how's it going? As the scroll says, I'm a professional developer. I have been for over 30 years, and currently I'm managing a coding school. That coding school is focused on upskilling, reskilling people, and a lot of those people have been laid off recently, and they're in the job market. So I created the stream as a place to kind of hang out, just have a consistent voice to get up to and listen to when they're in the job search, when they're out there getting those apps out. So if that's you, welcome. If that's not you, but you know somebody that could benefit from a friendly voice, keeping them updated on what's going on in the tech world, please share the stream. We stream Monday through Friday from starting at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. On those three streaming platforms. Those three platforms which allow you to stream. So let's kind of get to it. Let's get into it. Also open to any kind of conversation, any chats. If you want to throw something in the chat, I have been remiss at times of seeing the chat in a timely time. But I'm refocused on trying to keep on top of that. So throw a chat in there, and we'll chat. Okay, let's hit the job trends. Every day I get up, weekends included, and check how many new job postings there are for JavaScript developers. And I've been collecting that data for almost 3 years. And it generates these three graphs for me. The first one is the last week. You'll see that there's a slightest of uptick in the trend, but it's really been flat. For a little better perspective, we look at the last 6 months. You can see that since this is the beginning of the year, this is when the year started right here. Always a dip there in between Christmas and New Year's. But then it was off like a rocket until right about the time when the inauguration happened, and then everything kind of flattened out, and it stayed pretty flat. And then the new administration announced a bunch of tariffs, and it dropped down, and now it's even flatter at a lower rate. So, what can we say about that? Well, if you're following the news, if you're following the stock market, if you're following politics, you'll know that there's been no relief from the tariffs that have been announced, and it looks like there's an escalation there. And as a result, that uncertainty is making companies sort of circle the wagons. The bad news is this number is not growing. Number go up is what we want to see. We're not seeing that. The good news is there's a number. Every day I wake up, I look, there's new jobs being posted. Not as many as I'd like, as many as there needs to be, in my opinion, but new jobs nonetheless. So again, if you're in the job market, it's not a great time, but the people who stay consistent, who work on how they present themselves, will in the long run or in the short run. I had a friend who got laid off last month, and he just put out a first round of applications and got a call back from Amazon. Like within 3 or 4 days, they're really starting to get stuff out. So he's got as much experience as me and a master's degree. Also, that does not hurt. Does not hurt. He's got, in some ways, more experience than me, but we've been in the game the same amount of time. But jobs are out there, and if you are qualified and you look good, in the way that you present yourself, you can get some traction. They haven't made a job offer yet. He's in that process, but he is getting some response, so that's good to do. Good to hear. If you look at last year, that's the bad one, right? Now the trend line looks pretty flat, but the reality, the most important number is right over here. 1 year ago today, the job postings were up here, and today they're down there. We're coming zeroing in on almost half as many job postings today as there were this time last year, which of course factors in seasonality. So I was really expecting those numbers to be a lot higher, but we're not there. We're just not there. Lots more talk of recession in the news. That's not good. Not good for anybody. The frustration about this is it appears to be self-inflicted. You can argue about whether it's a necessary, pain, but it didn't have to be this way. So a lot of people frustrated, and we're going to see that in the news. Let's hit the news. I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day, and in part because that's where we look for work. That's where we look for jobs. They've got their own job board, and also because they've got this little news feature. It's got really good stories, so it's one way that I keep up with what's going on in the news. So let's hit some of those stories that I was looking at this morning. U.S. stock futures moved higher on early Tuesday, echoing gains in European and Asian markets after days of losses in one of the most volatile trading sessions in recent memory. An erroneous report on Monday came out and about a pause in tariffs, which prompted the U.S. stocks to add $2.4 trillion in value before erasing it within an hour. It's a bit of a roller coaster yesterday if you watch the markets. I don't watch them that closely, but I did see that by the end of the day that crazy thing happened. One tweet and the whole market, like a bunch of lemmings, reversed the trend for a short period of time. This is the world we live in. Also, it just points out, how much, how vulnerable the stock market is to manipulation. Investors are now watching China's vow to fight to the end on tariffs. Fight to the end. We went through a Cold War. I grew up in the Cold War. I was a kid in the 70s and into the 80s. It's not a good place to be. It's a better place when we all realize that we're different and we can learn from those differences. We can grow as a species. But we're not there right now. We're thinking very small-minded. Very small-minded. So we got credit usage slows as caution grows. That's actually, a double-edged sword. Consumer borrowing unexpectedly contracted in February, the first decrease in 3 months. Of course, 3 months previous to that, it was Christmas time, so credit usage is going to go up. But total credit dropped by almost 810 million, according to data compiled by Federal Reserve, amid a decrease in the credit card balances and auto loans. Meanwhile, the number of Americans tapping their retirement savings in so-called hardship withdrawals is as much as 20% higher than the historical average. That's a more concerning number. People put money on their, put purchases on their credit cards during Christmas time, and then they pay them off in January and February when they get their tax refunds. This is really common. It's not out of the normal at all. But hardship withdrawals. It's I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does that mean they're just like pulling it out of the market because of all this craziness, or are they really like, hey, we don't have money to live on, and so we're taking this money out? I don't know. I don't know how they factor that number in, but either way, it's not great news across the board. Jamie Dimon, head of America's biggest bank, warned on tariffs yesterday. That they will raise prices not only on imported goods but also on those made in the U.S. The J.P. Morgan chief added in his annual shareholder letter that the economy had already begun weakening before the announcement last week. The remarks come as investors raised bets that the Federal Reserve could deliver an emergency interest rate cut as early as next week to prop up the economy. I've been on this for 6 months talking about how we need those rate cuts. So that would be welcome, but not in the ways that I was hoping, right? I wanted a relatively strong economy that got stronger with the rate cut, not a weak economy that's trying to get its nose above water. Larry Fink, CEO of the world's biggest asset manager and BlackRock, said that many chief executives believe the U.S. economy is already in recession amid new tariffs. Bill Ackman, the founder of Pershing Square, said in a post that the new trade regime was a mistake and called for a 90-day pause in its implementation. Another prominent investor, Drunken Miller, also criticized the policies. These guys, I don't spend a whole lot of time listening to these guys. I think they're meddling in their economy. Does more bad than good. Does more good for themselves, more bad for you and me. But this is the stuff they pay attention to, and if there's a reason why it's hurting their business and not helping us, we should probably listen to them. OpenAI's Sam Altman's startup. OpenAI has discussed buying an AI device startup that's being developed by its CEO, Sam Altman, and ex-design boss Johnny Ive. Citing anonymous sources, the acquisition price of around $500 million has reportedly been discussed for the company, which is said to be working on an AI assistant. An AI-enabled device could accelerate OpenAI's efforts at broadening its consumer base and put it in more direct competition with Apple. The real question about they made this announcement that they were working together, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It's been a while. It's been cooking behind the scenes. And clearly, if you want somebody to design a physical device for you, Johnny Ive's got the bona fides. But every one of these AI assistant similar devices has failed miserably. Not even been just big announcement out the gate and just fell off a cliff. And they've been pitching this thing as a phone without a screen. which is basically the exact same thing as all these other devices that have come out. And I just don't, I don't see that working. The thing about these devices is there's such a radical change in the way that we already live our lives that they have to be compelling. Um, when the VR devices came out, you put the VR device on, you put a demo on, and everybody's like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" And then they go, "That was a nice vacation." They put it down, they don't come back to it again. Um, the VR devices, the hardware wasn't ready yet. It's too bulky. It's too big. Initially connected to by wires to the device, the computer. Now it's not as connected, but still too heavy to be wearing for more than an hour, 2 hours if you're going to watch a movie or something like that. Um, just not, fundamentally too much of a shift for everybody's average working day. These are less hands-on, but we have spent the last 15 years learning to navigate our phones. And as much as I don't like to spend time on my phone, guess what? This Maps app, I'm not getting rid of my Maps app. I'm not getting rid of my calculator. Um, there are just too many things on this phone that I need a screen for that I use every day. That's number one. And then number two, to have a hot mic open all the time. I mean, you know, technically that's true with these phones. Like, I don't use any of the voice assistants or any of that kind of stuff on my phone. But, and of course, there's a mic on that device. But it's just not the same as one that's designed to have a hot mic open all the time and to be transcribing every word that it hears and sending that off into the cloud. Like, on some fundamental level, I think most people are kind of creeped out by that. And then the other thing is, there's just something weird about talking to a device. It's just weird. I don't know. Maybe over time we'll get used to that, but I think that's going to be a big shift. I just don't the sci-fi idea of us talking to a computer and having it do things was great on Star Trek, but it's silly when I'm talking to my toaster and it's talking to my refrigerator and talking to my footstool. Like, these are ridiculous. I don't know. It's going to take some time, and that's as much as that's a combination. And they got a lot of money lying around for him to, give $500 from his left hand to his right hand for a device that has not proven any, that anybody will use it amongst these huge flameouts. That seems like a dumb idea. I don't think that's a good idea. What do we got? Google AI betrayed small business. We've been talking about this I've personally been talking about this for 2 years now. Like, it's as soon as we saw all the hubbub about where these LLMs were being trained off of scraping the internet, one of the first things I said was like, well, that's going to kill the internet because people are going to be suing. Like, you used my content and you didn't pay me for it. And maybe lots of lawsuits, which there have been, primarily by large publishers and those kind of things. But the secondary effects are there. And if you can go to AI and ask for a result that you would normally go to a web page and ask for a result because they've scraped the data. There's no financial incentive for the website to keep putting out data. Like, they make their living off of ads on their website or products that they sell on their website by people looking for information. And if the traffic dries up, then there's no way for them, to monetize their content. And so there's no reason for them to put out content. And I did not anticipate the whole AI overviews, summaries at the top of search results. I did not see that coming. And that's even worse. That's just even worse. I don't know. This is why my long-term bet on China being the dominant player in AI has always made sense to me, because they don't have, you can't sue in China the way you can sue here. There's no presumption that things that you create belong to you in China. And so if China wants to build an AI and steal everybody's information, it's not stealing. They own it. And that's going to give them an edge long term. I mean, it doesn't give them an edge on the models, but it does give them an edge on the training data. So, I don't know. Consumers counting costs on tariffs. The average household will see its purchasing power decrease by $3,800 this year as a result of tariffs, says Yale's Budget Lab. And some of those tariff-induced price increases are already in the works at businesses large and small. Apple, for example, is expected to raise the starting price of its iPhone X, despite keeping it at $999 since 2017. Meanwhile, some of the merchants that account for up to 60% of items listed on Amazon are planning price hikes of 25% or more. Another expected impact on the burgeoning trade war: car sales in the U.S. could drop by $1.8 million this year, citing a telemetry forecast. Through 2035, this could lead to 7 million fewer cars sold. These kind of what's going to happen in the next 10 years, that's nonsense. They can't even correctly forecast what's going to happen in the next year. So, don't listen to that nonsense. But, it will. It's going to raise prices. It's going to cause people, we saw during the pandemic that because new cars couldn't be made, that the used car market exploded. The value of used cars went crazy. We're going to probably see that some more. But there's another thing that I don't hear very much about, but it seems like we should be hearing more about that, and that is all these natural disasters that happen, particularly around flooding. When Houston got flooded, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that, there were this huge number of cars that got totaled by insurance companies because they were flooded out for like days, water above the seats and whatever. And when you sell those cars, you have to legally, at least in the state of Texas, and I'm sure it's probably the same in other states, but you have to legally tell the buyer, like, oh, you know what, this thing was submerged in water. Even if you get it working again, it might be rotting out and stuff quicker. And it really affected its sale price. I don't know what happens to those vehicles because, you got millions of people in the Houston area. And if 20% of them, all of his cars in the Houston area got flooded out, like, that's a huge number of cars on the market, on the secondary market, that have got this sort of fatal flaw there. But we got hurricanes, we got flooding from rains that just take some cars out of operation completely, and others, they end up in junkyards, parted out. I don't know what goes on with that, but that seems like there should be some story about that. I'd be very curious to know what happens when a big event like that happens, because we see this 2, 3 times a year now. We're seeing, either torrential rains lead to floodings and riverbanks overflowing and cars floating down the river. Like, we see that on a regular basis now, because of poor water management and global warming and whatever. So I'm curious about that. I'd like to know what's going on there. How are we doing on time? We're doing just right on time. Looks like. Shopify CEO issues an AI ultimatum. Toby Lucky says he has a fundamental expectation that employees in the e-commerce platform incorporate artificial intelligence in their work, and he's doubling down on new hiring policies. According to a staff memo posted publicly, employees will have to demonstrate why they cannot get what they want done using AI before requesting an additional headcount or resources. The memo added that employees' use of AI will now be a component of their performance reviews. He also said he was going to be basically giving everybody access to all the latest models and the coders to Cursor. And, I've talked a lot about this over the past streams. I code on average probably 6 days a week. For the last year for sure, year and a half, I've used AI considerably in that process. More as in the last 6 months, because it's just gotten better, and with the addition of Cursor and the sort of agentic tools, I code with it nearly every day. I was doing it last night. There are a lot of benefits to it, but I've been very judicious about how I use it. And I am not working on an e-commerce platform with, I don't know how many clients they've got. Millions of clients. I would not be throwing caution to the wind when it comes to having a bunch of AI code in a code base in an e-commerce company that is the cornerstone of millions of businesses. It's only going to take one bad piece of unreviewed code that's going to shut down the whole system, and we're going to have a very different conversation about this. I'm not the only one who's been crowing about this, but there is a place for AI in coding. Again, I use it every day. But the other thing to consider is that this work that needs to be done, that's a longer rant than we've got time for. But I will tell you, it's going to be a crazy, crazy world in the coding space. You have to embrace it. There's no way around it. Directionally, he's correct. Specifically, I think he's playing with fire because of who he is and his platform. I don't want a bunch of people throwing AI code into my banking app. I don't want it in my e-commerce app. I don't want it in my health and medical data and information app. There are just some places I don't want it controlling robots with guns. Like, I want, human eyes looking at every line of code. Not every line of code, obviously, but throwing caution to the wind on certain platforms is playing with fire. I don't think that's a good idea in the long run. All right, we done did it. Uh, if you're new and joined in the middle of the stream, again, my name is Keith. This is designed as a hangout for you to get those job applications out. We broadcast Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, broadcasting from Austin, Texas, where all the cool people live. All the cool people live in Austin, Texas. I got here in 1989, so I was here before the cool people moved in. But here is from where I broadcast. And I will be back in 23 hours and 30 minutes. You guys have a great Tuesday.